So here we have an equation to graph that has an x squared. When they only have x's, those are linear equations, they make straight lines. But when they have an x squared, they're called a quadratic equation, and we're going to see what they make. If I put a 2 in for x, I'm going to make a t-table because I don't know what it looks like. 2 squared is 4, 4 times 2 is 8. And I can do the same thing with 1 and 0 using my calculator or the order of operations. One thing to be sure of, if you're putting a negative number in on a calculator, a lot of them you need to do this. You need to put your negative in parentheses. So it'll do -1 squared times 2, and you should get 2 and 8 for those two values. So make sure that you can get your calculator to do that for you. Let's go ahead and graph these. Here's where these points are. And you can see they're not in a straight line. If you're to connect them with a nice smooth curve here, that is not a line. Every x squared equation has that shape. It's called parabola. So when we graph a parabola, a quadratic equation, there's some important things to talk about that graph. That middle point, that point where it stops going down and turns and goes back up, is called the vertex. In this case, the vertex is 0, 0. And also in this case, the vertex is a minimum. It goes up forever, this parabola, but that's the lowest point it ever has. It's its minimum value. We can also talk about the fact that this parabola, if you were to fold it in half, each side looks the same. So an imaginary line through the middle is called an axis of symmetry. Now that axis of symmetry isn't always on the y-axis, so we can always write it as an equation. Like this one would be x equals 0. X because it's vertical, and 0 because it goes through 0. That's an equation for its axis of symmetry. Now these are just some of the things that we talk about when we graph quadratic equations.